Human rights will be probed internally, President tells the BBC Sandeshaya.
Microsoft International agrees to reach an accord with Sri Lanka.
Tensions flare up at the GMOA over the alleged kidney racket said to have taken place in Sri Lanka.
Shortage of fertilizer in several areas. Ministry of Agriculture instructs 2 companies to release fertilizer.
Dates of the Grade 5 and GCE advanced level examinations announced.
A very good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News here on TV1 and Shakti TV. I'm Ramesh Bandara and tonight I'm joined by Bernadine Jaswal. Good evening, Bernadine.
Good evening, Ramesh, and a very good evening to all of you.
Well, Sri Lanka is inching ever closer to GSP plus concessions. We have the details of this story later on in the bulletin.
We have all these stories right after this. President Maithripala Sirisena presided over the event to declare open the Mahindodaya Technological Laboratory at the Saliyavawa Model School in Puttalam.
Speaking at the event, President Maithripala Sirisena said that it is the responsibility of the politicians to commit themselves toward the national objectives when solving the people's issues, casting aside the thought of preferential votes. The President requested the MPs and ministers to fulfill their responsibilities towards the people without aiming at the upcoming local government elections or the general elections that will take place in another 5 years.
President Maithripala Sirisena was interviewed recently by the BBC Sandeshaya. Speaking to journalist Azam Amin, President Sirisena affirmed that investigations on the violations of human rights during the war would be probed internally.
When you were elected to power, you said that violations of human rights during the war will be probed. It's been almost a year since you were elected. There does not seem to be any progress.
There are only allegations of violating of human rights. These are only allegations. We have a resolution that presented through the United Nations Human Rights Council. What we have to do is to create the foundation for the implementation of the recommendations. We need to look at what can be implemented and what cannot be implemented from the resolution. We have completely agreed to conduct a just probe into the allegations that have been made with regard to human rights violations. The investigation should be internal and indigenous without violating the laws of the country, and I believe in the judicial system, the other relevant authorities in this regard and foreign judges and prosecutors should not be involved in an investigation. I will not agree to that. The country does not need to import specialists. We have more than enough specialists, experts and knowledgeable people in our country to solve our internal issues.
There is a call for an internationally mediated investigation.
I will never agree to international involvement in this matter.
They speak of a hybrid court mentioned by the United Nations.
The international community need not worry about matters of state interest. I completely reject this. We can solve any matter from within the country. We have professionals in every field. We only need the international community for the development of the country. We do not need the international community for matters of state interest. We have the talented persons required for this process.
You speak of a domestic mechanism. It's been a year, but there seems to be no progress. Why is the government delaying the start of this process?
No, we will be creating the foundation for that and we will be working on it. These things cannot be done instantly or in a hurried manner. We have a certain culture in the country. We need to address this step by step. This is not something that can be done in 24 hours or overnight. When such incidents take place, we must study how the nation faced them and how long it took them to solve the issues.
But you cannot predict that the investigations would commence on one date and would conclude on another specific date.
I cannot predict, but I can assure that it will be done. We will do it, but I cannot give a timetable on when it will be done with.
Well, we have some good news for the tech industry of Sri Lanka. Microsoft International President Jean-Philippe Couture has announced that Microsoft hopes to reach a technology-based accord with Sri Lanka.
He had made this statement when he called on Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in Davos, Switzerland, on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum.
A statement from the Prime Minister's office reads that the President of Microsoft International has agreed to support the efforts to digitize the IT, education and social security sectors of Sri Lanka. It was also agreed to further study the possibility of providing Sri Lanka free access to the new inventions of Microsoft. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe also held a special discussion with N. Chandrababu Naidu, the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, India. During the discussion, it was also agreed to appoint a special committee to look into the possibility of strengthening the religious, cultural and tourism ties between Andhra Pradesh and Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe met with Takehiko Nakao, the President of the Asian Development Bank, on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. The President of the ADB had noted that he hopes to visit Sri Lanka next month to further discuss ways of supporting Sri Lanka's development drive.
The Government Medical Officers Association, or the GMOA, says that the Ministry of Health and the government must be held responsible over the alleged kidney racket taking place in Sri Lanka.
Kidney transplant is a complex process and a certain procedure needs to be followed. The responsibility lies with the government and the Ministry of Health. If the person in question is proven to be a member of the GMOA, the Central Working Committee will appoint a disciplinary committee and take action against him. If you can make a presentation with the respective authority with regard to that name, we can. There's no connection between that person and Dr. Padenia. We will inquire into that person. No, it's like this. Just as you have the right to question, we have the right to know about the media organization that made the complaint. If you follow the ethics of journalism, we too can look into these names. You must tell us that this person is connected to the kidney racket. You must make your claim with responsibility.
ඔබතුමා වගකීමෙන් යුක්තව මේ පැමිණිල්ල කරන්න. මම නෑ පැමිණිල්ලක් නෙවෙයි මම කියන්නේ මෙන්න මේ ඔබතුමාලගේ සංගමේ සමාජිකයෙක්ද කියලා වල කියන්නේ. ඉතින් මේ අපි එකයි CID report එනකන් ඉන්නේ. We are awaiting the report of the Criminal Investigations Department. We cannot work based on the paper chits given by certain people. If a media institution makes a claim, we can responsibly say that this person in question is connected to the kidney racket or not. You must tell us. Otherwise, for what are you searching for this name? We were never given vehicles from the budget. You must think, you must have the need to sling mud at Anuruddha Padenia. Many people did that. That is even been done now by some media persons. It's like the dog howling during a full moon.
Well, the Ministry of Agriculture has instructed 2 state fertilizer companies to issue sufficient stocks of fertilizer to all agrarian services centers in the country. We will have that story in a bit from now. For the moment, we move on to our local government story. Or rather, we won't move on to the exam date story. The dates of the 2016 main examinations have been announced by the Department of Examinations. Moving on to that story that we mentioned earlier, public representatives of local government institutions continue to comment on the elections for local government institutions.
One
cannot expect for a proper public representative to be elected under the divisional system. The locals would be hoping to vote for the persons who is more popular and who works on behalf of the people. There are people in various strongholds. However, under the divisional system, the people would be restricted to a division or a village. They will not move forward. We are prepared to contest under any system and win the polls. Persons vote within a democratic country to elect leaders. However, it is saddening that such situation is not evident within local government bodies. The people's way of life has been disrupted. We see the urgent need for an election. What is more practical is the preferential vote system. which would allow the people to elect a public representative that they prefer and obtain the services for the people.
ජනතාවට හිතවත් පුද්ගලයාට බලය දීලා ඒ තුලින් ජනතාවට අවශ්‍ය සේවය සපයා ගැනීම කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරනවා.
ඉස්සරහට එන්න යන ක්‍රමය ගැන
There is no issue in moving forward. There is no issue with the existing system. But there is one thing that needs to be considered. I believe that the system where the persons favoured by the people to be elected as chairman or mayor will be taken away. There is an opportunity for the people to vote for one who works for their entire area.
ගෙනාට ප්‍රදේශීය මිනිසුන්ට ඡන්දය දීමේ අවස්ථාව තියෙනවා.
මනාපින්ද කොට්ටාස ක්‍රමය આવොත් අපිට
The introduction of this system will not favour us. We are spread everywhere as a minority. We get elected to the urban council as a member because of the preferential vote.
පළවෙනි වතාවටත් ඉදිරිපත් වෙන්න ලැබුණේ.
The Ministry of Agriculture has instructed 2 state fertilizer companies to issue sufficient stocks of fertilizer to all agrarian services centers in the country.
Now, the ministry notes that there is no reason for a shortage of fertilizer to arise. However, it was reported that there was a shortage of fertilizer across a number of areas in the country.
Farmers in Anuradhapura have been severely affected due to the shortage of fertilizer.
During the reign of kings, paddy fields in the Rajrata flourished. Farmers today have been faced with many difficulties. The main reason can be cited as the shortage of fertilizer.
Farmers say that as the period of adding fertilizer to the paddy fields had passed, many acres of paddy land have been destroyed.
Stores are filled with the fertilizer that is to be given to farmers. The government ministers say that the fertilizer subsidy had been provided. There is no point in giving them to the stores. Release them to the farmers. Paddy will not grow if the stores are filled with fertilizer. We were given fertilizer after 2 to 3 months. This paddy field was made after so much of effort with debt. Now I have to consume poison.
That was an extract of a discussion that took place at the Veervilla Agrarian Services Centre in Hambantota when the farmers visited the centre to obtain fertilizer. Farmers who visited many such agrarian services centres had to head back empty-handed as fertilizer was not released despite of stocks being reported at the stores.
It is pointless for us to take this fertilizer now because the date has passed. We are finding it difficult to repay the debt.
There are stocks of fertilizers in the stores. Over the recent past, businessmen, traders and middlemen purchased fertilizers from these stores and centers in bulk stock with a bag of fertilizer priced at 1,200 rupees. Government officials are involved in this. Today the government announced the prices of fertilizer which will come into effect from the 1st of March. This plan is to sell a bag of fertilizer priced from 3,000 rupees to 3,400 rupees for 1,200 rupees. Their plan is to earn a massive profit.
Now, this evening, the Minister of Agriculture convened a media briefing to address these issues.
The cultivation in several areas of Hambantota commenced after the harvesting season. The fertilizer required for all the areas that commence late cultivation will be available at the agrarian service centres under the existing system. If there is information that someone is holding stocks, please keep us informed. Holding stocks means they want to have a bigger profit. There are state funds and resources. If someone is selling the bags which read government subsidized fertilizer for a price which is not mentioned in that bag, do not purchase that. Starting tomorrow, all centers that have registered with us can place their fertilizer orders and obtain them. We ask those distributors to place their orders tomorrow. We will release the stocks of fertilizer starting tomorrow.
Have we forgotten?
4-member board of inquiry headed by attorney at law J.C. Valyamuna appointed to probe corruption in Sri Lankan Airlines. Valyamuna committee report handed over to Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe after 2 months. The Valyamuna committee report found shocking details of corruption at Sri Lankan Airlines. The report also found corruption in changes made at Sri Lankan Airlines to carry out refleeting, unnecessary expenses for international tours and also purchase of luxury vehicles. The Board of Inquiry also reports that the staff of Sri Lankan Airlines were released to engage in the political activities of the Rajapaksa family.
Our policy is not to protect anyone who is found guilty of malpractices.
Sri Lankan one සේවය අද විශාල
Today, Sri Lankan Airlines is a burden. I do not think that any other airline experiences such a burden. We do not own any aircraft. This is the situation we are in. Corruption needs to be investigated. When I was the Minister of Aviation Services, I obtained a report on corruption that took place at Sri Lankan Airlines. I handed over the report to the President and the Prime Minister. Afterward, I had to step down from the ministry. When the report of J.C. Valiamana was published during the term of the 100 years government, the people of this country might have been surprised. The national carrier Sri Lankan Airlines has been used as a personal property and it has been made to be paid bordello where payments were made and was marred with fraud and corruption. How sad would the people have felt because of that suspected administration? In the past, committee reports and recommendations were moved to the dustbin. These were used for political gains to obtain power. Where is the Valiamana Board of Inquiry report? Has it been given to the respective administration of the CID to conduct an investigation? Why is the government hiding its face from this? My opinion is that the Valiamana report was sent to the dustbin after reaching deals with those accountable.
අදාළ පුද්ගලයන් සම ඩීල් එකක් දමලා මෙම වැලිවර අමුණු වාර්තාවත් කුණුබක්කයට යවා තියවන බවයි මගේ අදහස. Have we forgotten?
Defence Secretary Karunasena Hettiarachchi and former Secretary of Defence Gotabaya Rajapaksa arrived at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into serious acts of fraud and corruption today.
Defence Secretary Karunasena Hettiarachchi arrived at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry today to elaborate on the responsibilities of the Ministry of Defence. Secretary to the Cabinet Sumit Abe Singha arrived at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to elaborate on the decisions and decision-making process of the Cabinet of Ministers. As a notified party to the investigations, former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa also arrived at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into serious acts of fraud and corruption. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who arrived at the commission this morning, was present for around 7 hours. This is unjust because the rogues have not been brought here. Those who can serve politically while in the civil society called for the rogues to be nabbed. They did not nab the real rogues but have brought the person who can be used politically. Some of the rogues have turned state witness, some have been given state power. They have not been brought here. There were rogues before us, during our time and even now. I recall a month before the presidential election, I called on Venerable Sobhita Thero. He told me that a majority in the foreign services are outsiders. He said that this had a negative impact and persons from the foreign service need to be appointed. For example, persons like Vasantha Karannagoda, Thisara Samarasinghe, Jailath Veerakodi, Nanda Mallavarachi and Sudarshana Seniviratna are not political persons. They have rendered a great service and are professionals. What has happened today? What kind of persons are being appointed? Where is the civil organization?
As we revealed earlier, the Department of Examinations announced that the GC Advanced Level Examination will take place from the 2nd to the 27th of August this year. Grade 5 scholarship examinations will take place on Sunday, the 21st of August. The GCE Ordinary Level Examination will be held from the 6th to the 17th of December. On to more local news now. The wives of the military intelligence officers arrested over the disappearance of journalist Prageet Eknalikoda convened a media briefing today.
Last night, a puja to invoke blessings on the arrested officers was held at the Jayantipura Tambalavavar Sri Jinendra Rama temple. A media briefing was convened this morning.
My husband was arrested by the CID on the 24th of August 2015. He was questioned from there and was sent to prison. I have 3 children who are schooling. They are not performing well. I face various financial hardships. I call on the release of the 5 intelligence officers, including my husband. I make this plea from the President, the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defence. My husband is a person who sacrificed his life for the war. There are another 5 intelligence officers who have been jailed along with my husband. We have financial difficulty. Their salaries are also stopped. We are living with great difficulty.
Sri Lanka has moved one step closer to reintroducing the GSP Plus scheme for exporters after starting talks with EU delegates ahead of the Human Rights Commissioner's visit next month.
Countries must comply with 27 international conventions on human rights, labour rights, environmental action and good governance to qualify for the GSP Plus.
The purpose of the scheme is actually to help countries. We recognize that there are shortcomings. No country is perfect, not even in the EU. Therefore, it will be utopian to expect things to happen all in one day and all before the GSP Plus is granted. We know that. Therefore, the emphasis of the scheme now is on the status and on discussions after the country gets in.
Needless to say, our apparel exports are the most important from all our exports to the European Union. The European Union accounts for 46% of our apparel exports compared to 43% of our apparel exports going to the USA and 11% to others. So we really have to look at after 2011, the apparel exports to the EU declined. Not only that, the total exports going to EU as a percentage of our overall exports that are indicated by the yellowish color bar has declined from 2009 onwards.
This is the biggest issue we need to solve. So therefore, we are absolutely totally committed to ensure that we will do whatever it takes to get GSP Plus back. So from the point of our government, the bigger issue is how do we implement the resolution, and when the Human Rights High Commissioner comes next month, he will then corroborate the information that we have given to the delegation yesterday, and hopefully thereafter we would be able to make the formal application.
Following the breakfast seminar, Nico Zamis, speaking exclusively to News First, commented on the application process in obtaining the GSP Plus concession.
This will take about 6 months, and then the European Commission, the President of the Commission and the College of Commissioners will take a decision. This decision of the Commission then has to be reviewed by the two other institutions of the EU, which is the Council of Ministers, which is the ministers of the 28 governments of the EU, and of course the European Parliament. So they have the final say on an application by a beneficiary, in this case Sri Lanka. The whole process takes between 8 to 10 months.
On to more business news tonight. The lack of investor confidence has been termed as the core reason for the collapse of the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now, this was revealed on the Newsline program aired this morning.
The Colombo Stock Exchange's all-share price index has indicated a downward trend since the year began, before finally moving downwards by 633 points or 9.1%, though it recovered yesterday and today, closing at 0.50%, up after 4 straight days of losses.
This is a 400 billion rupee value erosion. How much of this is notional? How much of this is really impacting? How does it impact when you have such a value erosion?
The issue which we are facing right now is well, there's a lot of value erosion even now. Now the investors who invested, right, I mean unsophisticated investor, maybe outside Colombo, is basically taking a beating. Whether they are in a position to take such beating is the question we need to basically pause and start thinking. A very, very important point which was brought forward by Faraz is that the market has dipped almost close to about 10% and a value erosion of 400 billion. Now 400 billion is, for us, staggering. We're a small country. 400 billion is 10% of the market cap, and if you ask whether it is notional, well, part of it can be notional, but there is certainly an impact. We need to wait and see what this impact is all about.
In the past, we've had some stocks that zoomed from, I don't know, about 100 rupees or thereabouts to 1,000 whatever, 10. What were those? Was that really pumping and dumping, or was that just trading?
I would say that they were manipulated stocks.
Yes, right.
They were not in the normal
Because
realm of
fundamentally you
capital markets.
can't expect that kind of 1,000% increases. Companies fundamentally has to make money. There is growth, sales growth, revenue and profit growth.
Yeah.
And something really good has to happen for you to see an increase in the stock price.
Welcome back to the news. In more local news, State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardene announced that the War Heroes Privilege Card will be issued on the 25th.
Well, on the 25th of this month, we will launch the Virusara Privilege Card. We aim to give to families of fallen war heroes, plus disabled soldiers, policemen, everyone who was involved in the war. And through this special card, privileges and benefits will be available to these families and war veterans.
On a lighter note, an exhibition of Cuban and Sri Lankan artists was inaugurated at the JDA Pereira Gallery of the University of Visual and Performing Arts in Colombo yesterday.
Reflejos, reflection in Spanish, is being organized by the Embassy of Cuba on the occasion of the 57th anniversary of the triumph of the revolution, which fell on the 1st of January this year.
My dream was to build relationships, people-to-people relationships, as the only way to advance forward, to make progress together. Because governments come and go, but people remain. People remain with their hopes, people remain with their dreams, and their struggles for a better tomorrow. And their struggles against injustices, against exploitation. And so this was the dream I had.
With over 50 priceless works on display and many of them consisting popular Sri Lankan and Cuban elements, the exhibition reflects on the relationships and understanding that exists between the two countries that spans nearly 6 decades.
Sri Lanka and Cuba have been the best of friends. We are two countries who have never had any problems. The policy of our government is to be friends with everybody and enemies of none.
That we are gathered here because of culture. We are gathered here because we want to exchange, we want to learn about each other, we want to build a new friendship. All this exhibition that you see here is thanks to a huge investment in culture for more than 40 years that the Cuban Revolution has done. And I feel proud for that, and I feel proud for my people.
The exhibition boasts of exquisite works of 22 Cuban and 4 Sri Lankan artists that will interest audiences of all ages.
A group of artists in Havana. We are friends, we are very close in many projects, but it's not a political group, it's just a group of friends who are close, working in art, trying to do the best that we can do with the art. We try to use images that have things to do with the Sri Lanka culture, religions. I use in my painting, in this case, the Buddha eyes is one of the symbols of the Buddhism, and I try to mix with the Cuban culture and Cuban reality.
Well, that's a wrap for tonight. For News First, I'm Ramesh Bandara.
And I'm Bernadine Jasingh. Good night.
Good night.